this is the Student Theologian, and thank you again for watching. I got a lot of great views on my last video, and I appreciate everyone for tuning in and for continuing to see these. I would appreciate any subscriptions or new likes, or any comments if you disagree with me. I'm always welcome to have a conversation. So, I do have some life updates, some very negative updates, to tell you the truth. My girlfriend of 2 weeks broke up with me. That happened like last week. So that's disappointing. Um, she said our personalities didn't match, and so um, and that's like the dumbest reason I can imagine anyone breaking up with someone. But unfortunately, people these days will break off a relationship for over very minor things. It's absurd. This is why our birth rates are so low in this country. So, and that just got me thinking like all week, like how do men love versus how women love, and why was I so invested in this relationship that she really wasn't? And that's because women and men are different, right? So men, especially me, we love in a romantic, self-sacrificial type of way. So, like I'll spend like this is the second time I've had a girlfriend, so I'll spend like months getting to know this person, and I fall in love and would never like leave them, or I want to be loyal to them. And all those the same time that she doesn't feel the same way. And this must be just how women are. Kevin Hart once said that only women and children are loved unconditionally. Men are not loved unconditionally. And I've experienced this in my own life, unfortunately. But we're loved on the premise that we provide something useful. Um, so who knows? My ex could have been talking to someone else and found someone better or more rich or whatnot, but um, so you said I was a nice guy, so I think I have nice guy syndrome too. So I need to be less nice, um, because I feel like that's what women are turned off by for some reason. Unfortunately, as I said before, men love in a way that's different. Where like you see many examples of like millionaire and billionaire men like marrying broke women who come from nothing, and then you wouldn't see women doing that. You wouldn't see a millionaire woman go out there and date a middle class guy or an average guy like myself. And that's unfortunate. That's part of the big problem in the West, is this is the women, unfortunately, and how they date or don't date. um and like even the Christian women have this issue where they reject everyone and then wonder why they're still single when they're 30. It's ridiculous, but the only thing I can do is to keep going, keep trying with someone else, because I want to get married and have kids. Um, and I guess I got to try to be less attached. I can't ever like not love the way that God has engineered me to love. Um, and I don't have the capacity to just like get to know someone on a deep level and not like and not love them. Um, Even if it's just a friendship or something. Like I miss my friends who I get to know. I can't just like cut off someone and just not care about them anymore. But apparently women can, unfortunately. So yeah. So I take back all the good news, the news I had last week about my girlfriend. And that stuff was accurate, as it turns out. I was being deceived. And it's one of those things where I wish I would have known that it was going to end like that, because then I wouldn't have had to spend as much money and time getting to know someone that didn't care about me. So that's that's my issue. So, um, but yeah, women will love you as long as you're doing something useful for them. It's very pragmatic outlook of love and marriage and stuff. So that's disappointing, and that's kind of like culture of dating in America. That's why so many guys go the passport route, and more power to them. Um, but I have the standard that if I was going to go get a passport, it would have to be some a white woman from Europe, Australia, or Canada. I've said it before, I don't want to date outside my race. So I'm back, unfortunately, on the horrendous dating market that looks a lot like that it says chaotic and discombobulated as the Vietnam War. And when I finally do get married, it will feel like I'm landing safely in America after surviving the Vietnam War. So, yeah. Now, speaking of the problems with American women, we've had this case that I want to talk about, like that I will get to later in the video. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about the AFD and the Restore Britain Party. I'm going to give my thoughts on the latest book I bought. And then I'm going to talk about why being single is an affliction. And yeah, that's going to conclude. So there's only going to be a little bit of theology at the end, which is what I usually do. So, okay, I'm going to write a book. So I'm working on that. It's going to be shaped kind of like a novel, but just all the characters and names and stuff have been changed. But it's going to be a book about my life. I had a roommate before when I was in the orphanage that I let him read through all my journals, and he told me that I could write a book on this. And so much more has happened in my life after that. So I have decided to write a book on that, and I'll be excited when that finally gets done. I have a long ways to go. I've only created like the introduction, but I have the concepts down. I have the ideas of what's going to go in the book. It just needs to. I need to be motivated to put the pen to the paper. I start classes next Monday, technically. Have reading assignments that I've been working on, and it's been good so far. I'm doing a class called Personal Evangelism and Systematic Theology 3. So I'm gonna learn about evangelism and theology, and it's gonna be great. I can't wait because these two things that Christians typically fall into a heavy on two ends of the spectrum. Either they're really theologically inclined and they don't do a lot of evangelism, or they do a lot of evangelism and not being theologically um, inclined. And you need both because you can't preach the good news if your doctrine's not solid, because then you'd be preaching a false gospel or a lukewarm gospel. And if you do have the truth of the gospel within you, if you have the correct doctrine, it doesn't do the world any good for you to stash that away in yourself and not share it. So we need both evangelism and correct doctrine. And that's what I'm going to be learning about this semester. And I'm excited to get this semester started and to get my mind off some things. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to geopolitical issues is I want to talk about what broke the left. If you haven't noticed, things in America have been getting very tense over the last years, and we can trace this back all the way to COVID. This is when after COVID, the left became violent. They became vehement. They've had this like viral hatred for everyone who disagrees with them, pretty much. And it was the woke culture, the cancel culture thing. It existed since Obama. Obama brought that crap here, and I mean Joe Biden just continued to push it because he's Joe Biden being the vice president of Obama. He was just an extension of Obama's policies. and he continued to push this, and then the pandemic happened, COVID, right? And so you had two basic groups that emerged from the pandemic. Those like me who never would get the vaccine, and we didn't comply with the mask mandates. And then you had those on the other side, the liberals, who did get the vaccine. They got the vaccine, the boosters. They did the mask mandate. They wore their masks in the stores and stuff. And Joe Biden, I'll never forget this, because we remember Joe Biden as this old senile guy who um, didn't have a very sound mind, but he was actually pretty evil once you like look at COVID. That this happened, I believe, the pandemic happened in 2019, and by then Joe Biden didn't get completely senile like he did later on. But Joe Biden released this statement, right, that said basically, "Thank you all for getting who did get your vaccine." And on the flip side of that, he said, if you are among the unvaccinated, you were looking at a wintry death." Essentially, like he he lumped half of the country into one group and demonized them. And the left, they ate this stuff up. They believe this nonsense about the other side. They believe that anyone who didn't get that vaccine is their enemy. This is the level of dehumanization that we see in communist regimes, because these are your adversaries. This is the kind of stuff that Vladimir Lenin pushed when he massacred millions of Russians who opposed him. Now, Joe Biden didn't massacre anybody, but he paved the way for political assassination and political violence down the road. When he said that, the left ate that stuff up, and they started to believe that anyone who did not comply are a threat, are terrorists, basically. And they treated us differently ever since. It's like we didn't get the vaccine, we didn't comply, therefore they're they hate us because are we seem to have gotten away with it. We're the unvaccinated, we're still alive, we're still kicking, we're still voting. And the left, they just hate that. They hate that we were allowed to rebel against the system, against their rules, and then we had no consequences for it. And that's what the left hates. They want everyone to comply with them, and then they want to punish those who don't comply with them. And the unvaccinated, the vast majority of us, we emerged just fine after COVID. So, and that kind of broke them. That led them to this level of dehumanization of their enemies that we haven't seen in America since the Civil War. And then this has been further escalated by Donald Trump's victory in 2024. And as I've said in previous videos, the left was they realize that their ideology is failing on a national scale, that people are rejecting their message, and they don't like that. They don't like that one bit, as the Joker would say. And then so when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, brutally shot in the neck in front of his wife, the left celebrated. They legitimized political violence, because this is who the left are now. They truly believe that the unvaccinated right are enemies to be put down, and anyone who does put these people down are their heroes. Look at the people who the left idolizes. They idolize Charlie Kirk's killer. They idolize people like Luigi Mansione, who killed a CEO who was a husband and father. They idolize a guy who stabbed a woman in the neck. They idolize. We'll get to this topic later, but they idolize a woman who strangled to death her three kids. The left is violent. All these people and then all these people that post these fake stats that show that right wing violence is just as much a threat as left wing violence. That's dumb. We don't see that. We never see a left wing podcaster get shot in the neck and then the right just celebrates it. Like we don't see that. We don't see, I mean, whenever someone who is a Republican or on the right who kills or hurts a kid, we condemn them. We don't idolize them. You don't see right wingers like idolizing a white guy who commits a violent act against a black woman or something like that. You wouldn't see that amongst the right. You don't see the right pushing violence as legitimate. And there's even like polls that show that left people who are left wing are more inclined to say violence is the answer versus those on the right wing. It all is because the right is grounded still in Christianity and the belief that we should pray and love for our enemies and forgive. And the left, they don't have that foundation. They believe in vengeance. They believe in eye for an eye, and they don't believe in having compassion or mercy on those who oppose them. So, and because of how this Iran war was mishandled by the Republicans, it's discouraging to see that the left, the Democrats, do have some momentum. It's not going to take. It's not going to lead to them winning the presidency, I don't think. But that's a separate topic for another day. I just want to reiterate the fact that what broke the left was the COVID pandemic and the fact that people did not comply with it. After, like I said before, they hate us because we didn't comply and we survived anyways. So COVID was just, it took cancel culture to a whole new level. And like I've even had like conversations with people on Facebook, and the left are getting pretty violent. However, as history shows, whenever the left wing violence does get to a point where they're like they're getting out of control, the right does respond forcefully, and we should be able to defend ourselves and stock up on arms, because you never know. A civil war could pop up simply because the left can't stop being violent jerks. So, speaking of violent jerks, and I'm just gonna say, like, we need to start like making more harsh penalties for violent criminals. Like, I think if you rape a child or kill a child, I think you should be given the death penalty. But at the very least, you should be locked up in jail for the rest of your life without any possibility of parole. And that extends to men and women. And that extends to Lindsay Clancy, too, who admits to killing her 3 kids. That just sounds just so barbaric to me. Like, if you're gonna if you have depression and decide to kill yourself, I wouldn't suggest it. Please don't. But if you're already there, like, don't drag other people down with you. That's like the most selfish thing you could do as an individual, as a human, and especially targeting kids. Like, that's the most cowardly thing anyone can do, is to hurt a child, because children are weaker, smaller, and they need our protection, and especially the protection of a mother. And this woman obviously should never have become a mother. These people need to be locked up in insane asylums, in jails. And what's disturbing is that we see all these liberal feminists not celebrating it, but they're in solidarity with this child murderer. And it makes sense now that the left pushes for abortion, that they also are on the side of child murderers. Because to the left, what's the so because according to the left, if you can kill a baby at 9 months old, I mean, what's the difference between that and killing a baby that's 3 years old? Like, if Lindsay Clancy had killed 3 puppies, or 3 black women, or 3 black children, or something like that, the left would be calling for immediate execution. But because she killed 3 white kids, they want to be in solidarity with her. And I think Lindsay Clancy should be publicly executed. Anyone who supports her should be put in an insane asylum because clearly they're not right in the head. And they should not have any kids of their own because they've shown that they cannot be trusted to have kids and be good mothers or parents. And we need a far right party in order to push all this stuff, all these policies that I'm suggesting forward. But the only thing we have, unfortunately, is a Israeli controlled Republican Party who is still very weak and ineffective at actually solving these issues. Which is a great segue into our next segment, where we're going to talk about the AFD and Restore Britain and why America needs a multi-party system. So the AFD has been getting a lot of momentum recently, despite the fact that all the other parties of Germany have united against them, like the conservatives, the liberals, and the socialists have all like united in order to stop the quote unquote far right AFD from taking over and actually pushing their policies forward. And it's pretty pathetic, but it also shows you that the AFD is actually in the right. Because if people are forming entire alliances against you in order to try to stop you, that shows that they fear you. They know that you actually want to solve the issue. The establishment on both the right and left, they hate the AFD for that very reason because they want to usurp the system to establish a country that's truly Germany first. And I salute the AFD. I hope they take over and push all their policies forward because Germany needs to be saved from the neoliberal hell that they've been in since the Cold War. And Restore Britain is another party that I'm excited about. They've added over 100,000 members, which puts them at, I can't remember if it's fourth or fifth, but it puts them in above groups like the Tories and the Socialists in Great Britain. So they have had a lot of momentum this year. Reform UK, which is still more right wing than the Tories or the Labour Party, they're the ones who have the majority right now. They're the biggest party, anyways. I know they have a Labour president right now, but once his term ends, I think Reform will get into there, and then they'll have their president. But the problem with Reform is that they're pretty moderate. And Nigel Farage will try to push more moderate policies as he tries to become more mainstream. But I think having the Restore Britain party there to help guide Reform UK on, I think is good because Restore is going to push Reform to push more right wing policies forward. Mike Rowe is the leader of the Restore Britain party, and I've been impressed with how he talks about removing the Islamization of Great Britain and making sure their people are not replaced. And then he goes on to say a lot of great things about how Britain should stay British and how he's unapologetically going to fight for the British people. And we need leaders like that. We need a Restore America party. And one of the other key differences between Reform and Restore too is that I believe Reform is more like Israel friendly, where Restore wants to do away with all foreign entanglements and foreign lobbyists. So Restore would be more akin to the America First movement that we have in America under people like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. But I think Mike Rowe is a great leader, and I hope that he's prime minister one day. But he is getting up there in age, so maybe someone younger than him will take over him. and push his party forward. But and the only reason why Restore Britain and AFD can succeed in Europe and take over and push their policies forward is because Europe has a multi-party system. This means that there's like five major parties that in these countries, four or five, and each of them have different varying degrees of leftism and rightism. Like Reform UK is a moderate right wing party, where Restore Britain is probably the most far right party in Great Britain. Then you have the Green Party, which aligns with the socialist left, the hardcore left. Then you have the Tories, which are moderate conservative, but less conservative than Reform. Then you have the Labour Party, which has traditionally always been Britain's left wing establishment party, so it's like they're Democrats. And in Germany, you have similar things. Now, under the multi party system, alliances will converge based on certain issues. Like when it comes to stopping mass immigration, Reform, Restore, and a lot of the Tories, not all of them, but a lot of them will form these alliances to stop mass immigration, which is a great thing. But and the Labour Party, which is in control now, they can align themselves with the socialist on certain things, even though their power is getting gutted right now because the Labour Party's unpopularity. Yeah, Keir Starmer was a very unpopular leader. There was polls that showed that he was literally just as popular as Adolf Hitler was in 1945 Germany. Like when Germany had lost the war, Hitler was just as popular as Keir Starmer was, which is crazy to think about. But it makes sense once you look at Keir Starmer's record and him allowing all these like Islamic rape gangs, and his predecessor is not any better. He's an open borders Islamist who ignores all the crimes that Muslims have committed and continue to commit in Great Britain. Like there was like rules that they have. Have y'all heard about this? Where they have these bulletin points, these packets that they give to Muslim immigrants that are coming from like Africa and the Middle East, and they tell them that they instruct them on like what consensual sex is versus rape. I'm like, if you have to like explain to people that rape is bad, you probably shouldn't allow these people in the country in the first place. You think? Like there's just a complete lack of common sense and a lack of responsibility that exists within the modern day Labor Party. Like I don't see how anyone can support these clowns that are in office who are in office right now. This guy is a clown. The police who enforce all these stupid laws against their own people are clowns. Like I'm a veteran, but if they told me I had to ignore rape gangs, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like if I see someone trying to rape someone, I'm gonna put a bullet in their head. It's just what they deserve. We need to start taking violent crime more seriously, which is we need to do that in America too. But unfortunately, the left appoints all these liberal judges that let rapists and killers go scot free, and it's absurd. It's ridiculous, and we need to stop doing that. Increase the prison size, build more prisons if necessary, put more people in there until our streets are safe. That would be my agenda if I was running for president. So, my next segment, and this is already going on pretty long, but my next segment is my thoughts on Alan Jacobs' book, How to Think. If you, Jacobs, he's a very smart individual. I can't remember if he's a professor or whatnot. I didn't read the preface to the book, but his book on thinking, on how we should think, is monumental. I think this is a book that Republicans and Democrats need to read, especially when it comes to all this like political tension that exists between the right and the left, where someone can get shot in the neck and then that the other party celebrates it. Like, we need to read this book, understand like how to approach people who disagree with us, and do it in a respectful manner. While you can disagree with them, while still maintaining the fact that they are humans who are worthy of life, who have a soul, and we need to start seeing the sanctity of human life. Like, I have friends that are liberals. I have family members that are liberals, and when we get along just fine, I don't think they should die or anything like that, or get thrown in jail. The political tension that exists in America is astounding. But Alan Jacobs' book, How to Think, he talks about how we often put ourselves in an in group and see everyone outside of the group as the out group. He calls this the RCO concept. RCO stands for repugnant cultural others. This is a label that we put on someone who doesn't fit within our in group. They belong to a different religion, a different political party, a different class. It's a very cliquish type behavior. We're, it's at the point where we're not willing to sit down and listen to someone who disagrees with us without seeing them as something below human, subhuman. And And that's why you got to be able to sit down with people who disagree with you. I've had great conversations with Muslims and Hindus, liberals, obviously, because I have family members that are liberal, and we have great conversations. We don't agree. However, we can't agree to disagree without calling the other person fascist or communist and cutting them off. The fact that there were people who cut off family members or friends because of the election just shows you how immature a lot of these people are. And we need to understand how to think, as Alan Jacobs says, um, in respect to our humanity, and that requires us to lose our egos, our pride, and see the other person as worthy of having opinions that we may not like. But it's a great book. I definitely recommend it. He goes on to talk about RCOs, about how this woman who was in the Westboro church um, came was in this cult basically, and came to an understanding that she was in the wrong because of how she was raised and how she was taught to treat other people like trash, like they're belonging to this repugnant cultural other group. So, okay. So last thing I want to talk about is, okay, I want to bring up my breakup again because this kind of fits into what I'm going to talk about here. But when I go through stuff like this, I always try to sit down and have a conversation with one of my friends, and that's what I did. And he told me about how how being single is an affliction. It's not a gift. And the reason why he says this is that that it is normal for me to feel sad and for me to want marriage and a family and kids and stuff. This is a normal thing that everyone should have. Women need to have that desire more often because then our birth rates will go back up. So, but no, this idea that being single is somehow a gift, that people have the gift of singleness, this is a stupid concept. The gift of singleness exists for maybe like 1% of us, but the rest of us want to actually get married, have sex, have kids, and the majority of us in the church should do that because we're we're not ever going to like increase the birth rates and outbreed the Muslims or the Hindus if we believe in this crap theology about the gift of singleness. So being single is an affliction. It should be an affliction. Unless you're one of those people who don't struggle with sexual temptation at all, you should be wanting a wife or a husband if you're a woman. You should be wanting a spouse and enjoy that relationship that all humans are made for. Almost all humans are made for. Okay, so and there's two different Bible verses where people try to justify their theology on the gift of singleness. One is where Jesus is talking to the disciples about marriage, and they say that, and Jesus tells them that divorce is not permissible, and the disciples say, well, maybe it's better that we don't get married. And then Jesus says that not everyone can accept that, but basically let it be. So for those who can, that right there is saying that Jesus is basically saying that not many people can accept that, which is exactly what I've been saying, that not many people can live a life of singleness without temptation to sexual temptation. Um, not everyone could have this life of chastity, of celibacy. So, in that case, they should get married, which is the assertion that Paul makes when he makes this declaration on being single. We don't know Paul's marriage history or dating history. Excuse me. We don't know Paul's dating history, if he was married before and then widowed, or if he just never got married. But he does say that he wishes people were like him so they could focus more on ministry and on spreading the gospel. But even he had understanding that most people would not fit into that category, which is why he made that wish. But Paul's singleness is because he was in an exceptional case. He was being an apostle, had to spread the gospel to the world. So it's understandable that he would be in this place of singleness. However, Paul is not saying that he thinks everyone should be single, like that should be like a goal or something. Like singleness should not be your goal either. That's just it comes from a crap theology as well. And the reason why we know this is because other Bible verses tell us about why it's good for us to find a wife and have kids. Proverbs 19:14. Fathers can give their sons an inheritance of houses and wealth, but only the Lord can give an understanding wife. So yeah, God gives us the gifts of wife. Psalm 127, 3 through 5. Children are a gift from the Lord, they are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. And the Bible is just packed full of God just telling us how good it is to find a prudent wife and to have kids. So I don't think that should be. So that's why you should be seeing um, singleness as an affliction, just like Hannah in the Bible in First Samuel. Do you think she just like was content in her situation and was just content with being barren? If she was, she would have never prayed to the Lord asking for kids. She would have just been going about her life, just a barren woman. And we never would have had Samuel if that happened. But no, she prayed about her affliction, and God granted her kids, a kid, Samuel. And we're supposed to cry out in affliction too about our singleness, especially if we have that desire to get married, which 90% of Christians should have, of course. And I think that, yeah, there's a lot more that we could say. Um, no, again with Paul, he I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I can't remember the exact verbiage, but he does say essentially that those who can't control themselves should get married. And so, like, if you're like 99% of guys who struggle with lust and stuff, like, your calling is to not live a life of singleness, but your calling is to get married. And the calling of on a man, of course, in this situation is tough because we do have to be the ones to ask women out. That's just the way God made us. And so we risk being rejected a lot, which stinks. But I was watching YouTube, or not YouTube, but Facebook Reels, and Myron Gaines talked about how he got rejected like 40 times in a single night by like 40 different women. And so someone who's a famous podcaster who probably has millions of dollars can get rejected like that many times in one night, then just imagine how many times um, people like average people like me are going to be rejected. So we just have to, unfortunately, get used to it and not take it personally. It's their loss, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to date and marry a guy who makes YouTube videos like this and who's owning the left with facts and logic like I do? Eventually, someone will see my worth, and who knows, maybe they'll make a guest appearance on my show. But until then, you're just stuck with lonely old me, the student theologian. And with that, I wish you all a good day. I'll see you next time. And thank you for watching. This has been the Student Theologian.